Future of Learning. I'm Irina Bokas. There is a lot of talk in education nowadays that schools should focus on nurturing creativity and innovation in students. And here's why. A recent study by the independent research firm Edelman Berland established that in 2015, there were nearly 54 million Americans freelancing. That is more than a third of the American workforce. The key to survival and prosperity in a project-based economy can no longer be in preparing a labor force with routine skills and knowledge. In fact, there is nothing routine about it at all. The most desirable freelance undertakings require skills and capacity to create, lead, and implement long-term projects with non-routine deliverables. What fundamental changes does this require in America's system of education? Our guest today is Yong Zhao, a professor of educational management policy and leadership and director of the Institute for Global and Online Education in University of Oregon. In the fall, Yong will join the University of Kansas as the Foundation Distinguished Professor. Yong, thank you very much and congratulations on your new position.
Thanks, Irina.
As you know, innovation usually happens when individuals start questioning authority and asking questions. But that does not happen without some prior foundational knowledge. Its school's curriculum determines the foundational knowledge or what students should know, such as average mean deviation in math or perhaps Newton's first law of physics. How do you believe curriculum should change in order to nurture creativity in students, and who should decide what students should learn?
Well, foundational skills and knowledge is absolutely important for creativity, or at least for meaningful, productive creativity. But how is that presented, how is that acquired matters. So what I believe is that given today, we do not have to have one teacher be the monopoly source of information. Traditionally, we prescribe the teachers to provide the source. Today, information is really accessible anywhere. That is, our children can develop those foundational skills on their own. But the key is that are they interested in developing that? So I think the first thing we need to know is that children should decide their passion, their interest. When we are born, every child has some kind of passion, some kind of interest, and then we should follow that. Teachers, adults should actually provide the resources so they can build those things. Teachers, adults can inspire them to do that. But I don't think the traditional way of trying to imposing on them, just in case they might need it, is not going to work.
So they can still learn the same things, just as how it's presented.
Well, they could be learning the same thing. They could. Okay. Some people may not be, because right now our school's curriculum is pretty narrow. You know, it's narrow to what adults think are valuable. We're still preparing people to say, think about engineering, accounting. We do a lot more in basic literacy, basic math, not enough science, not enough arts, not enough, even sports. I think now we should do more and broader curriculum, and schools has to change that. We need to really design and develop learning environments in response to students' needs, students' passion, again, rather than trying to prescribing them, but we follow them.
Okay, so instructionally speaking, the idea is emerging that schools should, or teachers should focus on students' strengths or what they're good at rather than their deficits or what they're not good at. But as human beings, we tend to like what we're good at. And very often, strengths develops from initial deficits within the learning process. Then what is the difference then between focusing on child's strengths versus setting high expectation and developing the can-do attitude in this child?
Well, I mean, the first of it is when we say, yeah, we like doing what we're good at, is that, but our schools have traditionally told you not to do that. Because again, our schools do not value everything. We value what's been prescribed in the curriculum. So I think when we talk about strength-based, is that strength-based still can say you can be great. Not you can, yes, I can do this. But if you do what you're good at, you'll become much better than what you do. You know, I can do this in an area you may not even be good at. Think about the movement you can do. So let's say, if you're good at math, you can, if you have a can-do spirit applying in math, you can really be a great mathematician. But at the same time, you are no hope in, let's say, in dancing. You can still have the can-do spirit, but even though you can try everything, you want to be a great dancer. And if you're not great, That's, you were talking about non-routine. If you're not great, you have very little value.
But still, in the same token, I believe that strengths can develop if you work at things. So does it mean we should not work at them, or maybe we stop working at them at a specific point?
Well, it depends. It depends. I think some you can always grow strength in the, like, so-called strength comes from really both nature, what you're born with, and your early environments, but then also, of course, your passion. But what happens is that you at certain times, there are certain constants in life. Time is a constant. You only have so much time. If you try to develop something which you're not good at, then your time is wasted there. You have to make a choice sometimes. I want to be great at everything, but I only have 24 hours a day. So it's like in life, you only have limited money, limited resource. You have to look very hard to say, okay, can I have everything? The same thing. The kid can want to be, I want to do baseball, I want to do basketball, I want to do football. But then if you want to be a great football player, you might have to give up on something else. So that's a hard human choice to make. I don't think there's one specific guideline I could give you to say, oh, stop now, do this. But it's really a good judgment. And every individual is different. Every individual has an individual pathway, individual characteristics, individual context, how you move.
Right, so global trends also show that right now we have a shift globally from one larger provider of similar services to a multitude of smaller providers that can cater to individual needs. And one way or the other, but public education system does have a monopoly in education of next generation of Americans. That means that it doesn't matter how different school systems are, they're still operated and kind of run the same way. How do you believe the current systems and operational processes that are currently present in public schools affect children's creativity and also their disposition to question authority?
Actually, this is an interesting thing. American education, even though we have a public sector, America actually has many more providers because technically each district is autonomous. If we did not have the recent takeover by federal government and by the state in terms of curriculum, testing, assessment, America had over 10,000 school districts. And each district, if you allow more autonomy, each school, there could be a different provider. So I think the public sector can have multitude of providers, and each teacher, we have enough autonomy, can be a provider. I think it's a different way of thinking this idea. What we need is a shifting of thinking. It's not trying to prescribe him so many existing providers, in one way. Like for example, McDonald's has I don't know how many thousands of stores, but they are one provider. Even though they're providing different places because it's centrally controlled. But public education, if it's not centrally controlled, they could become more independent. So that's what we would argue for more local autonomy.
Well, they're talking about the local autonomy then. Right now, with fourth industrial revolution and the interconnectedness that come with this, no longer the location where a person lives can determine the set of needed skills like it's been maybe 30 years ago. Do you believe that all local systems and communities are capable of developing creative curriculum, or would it create even larger gap in educational opportunities?
I believe we actually do. This is a time we could equalize, and we're in the time that we have the resource and to equalize opportunities. I really believe every location, even you could be in Alaska, could be, I've been to some very isolated areas in Alaska, they have access to the same expertise as you would have in Washington, D.C. And I think I visited a small community called Sitka, and Patsy Solberg went there too. It's a very small community, you have to fly in there, but they had the same access. You could. And the thing is that, do you have the courage? And the information is there, and the expertise is there, is that, do you have the courage to come up with something? So what I think you may be talking about is not really lack of expertise, is more lack of the traditional culture to make that shift. And that is very hard to change. It's that, you may not have the leadership. It's the same thing, we've seen that in the US, look at our biggest problems, actually it's not in isolation, it's the large cities, New York, Detroit, Los Angeles. And they have more access to expertise, but somehow their district, their schools are not doing great in innovation.
But also the local schools are supposed to reflect the mindset of the local community. That's how it's set up. So that is what my question was probably referring to. The mindset of the community might not be quite, or is it there?
Which is always a problem, that's actually what I would say. Unless the community wants to change,
Yes.
you cannot change. But even with the one system, you still cannot force change on it. You can force what I call behavior change. It's very hard to force culture change. And that is very slow. And I would really believe any of those changes has to come from within and from bottom up to true, massive changes. I mean, the federal government can force certain things, but normally I don't know if that forced thing is actually truly lasting changes.
Also, the public schools do play an exclusive role in education of our students, at least right now. Let's say in 20 years, if we will predict, how do you believe this role will change?
Again, I think public schools should maintain public. Actually, public schools can provide more opportunities for students. Public schools, the fact that America actually is doing well in many fronts is because it's public. You do not pre-select students, prejudge students, allow everybody to have the same chance. And how public schools can transform to be even more so, to respect more individuals. I hope that's going to change in 20 years. So, but we should have much more, again, local control, more teacher autonomy instead of more prescription.
And how do you believe the role of parents and learners will change?
Well, actually, I'm trying to work on a new book called Learners Without Borders. From a student's perspective, I think students need to learn to take control. They are the provider of their own learning. As we do, all professionals do that. We create our own learning ecosystem from different places. I think we need to aim to help our students to become more autonomous, self-autonomous, self-regulatory learners, so they can control their own learning. And teachers and schools will provide the environment. It's like become a smart consumer of educational resources.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your insight and for your time today.
Well, thank you, Irina. It's a pleasure.
As children grow and absorb the environment around them, they're likely to follow the examples and attitude of adults. To model creativity and innovation, changes in curriculum or methodology alone are not enough. There is a need for a different system of education delivery and perhaps a new set of decision makers, including learners.